Good afternoon, everybody. Chris, what's going on?
Not much.
Jim?
Nice, pleasant day.
Ted?
Great day to be alive.
And then we have a new voice today. Miss Kristin, say hello.
What's going on, guys?
Cool. We're going to introduce Kristin in just a second. Just to start things off, phone number 502-233-9800. You can always visit us at peaceofmindradio.com. And this is the third or fourth session we're recording the video?
Third.
Okay, so third. Yeah, so we're going to have three on there. All right, so first of all, let's start off by introducing Miss Kristin.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay,
Another day
cool.
in paradise.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a change for us because it's mostly guy voices, what you've heard over like a long time. We've had a couple of specialists on here that were female, but Kristin's joined us today, and Kristin is a retirement. I hope I get this right.
Okay.
Correct me if I mess up. It's a retirement income certified professional.
You nailed it.
All right, cool.
Proud of
So yeah, and you're not from here, right? You're from where?
I'm from Northern Virginia, right outside of what they call the blast radius. So if you're from Northern Virginia area, right outside D.C., they have this like invisible line that locals know about, where they'll pay government workers extra money to live on the other side of the line. So if I don't know if I'm allowed to say the B word on the radio. I guess it's not an airplane.
Yeah, no, you're good.
If,
you can say anything you want on here.
Okay.
Jim will he'll block it out if you say something too bad. Go ahead.
So bomb goes off, people, I guess,
Right.
are safe on the other side. So we're right on the other side of that.
Yeah, cool. So why don't you take a second to sort of, and we got you on here for a specific reason. We're talking about a solution today that we all have sort of in our toolbox. And but talk about what your role is in working with us, like how you interact with us, that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, outside of having bourbon, having pickled hot links like
There
we
you go.
did last night
I
at
know.
dinner.
Yeah.
Professionally, we work with advisors like you guys and advisors across the country to help them build retirement income plans, identify solutions that can help clients lower their overall risk in their portfolios, especially in retirement. At the same time, hopefully improving their returns and the upside, and overall putting more money in their clients' pockets once they hit that retirement age, so that they can, first of all, maintain their quality of life in retirement,
Right.
and also mitigate some of the challenges that they will face and they weren't really relevant pre-retirement.
Yeah. So Chris, how do you, when it comes to folks like Kristin, she's a resource for us, is a great resource. How do you typically interact with Kristin?
Okay, well, when I've got a particular client that I'm dealing with some difficulty, it's not the easiest thing in the world to figure out the correct solutions to put together. I can call Kristin up because I know she's an expert in these particular fields. And she's going to help me kind of design the ways that we're going to solve the problems that the client is presenting and do it in the most efficient way. There's no way that I can remember or even know all of the things that Kristin knows in her particular field. She's the true specialist for us in that aspect.
Well, it's kind of like an attorney, right?
Exactly.
Or a doctor for that matter, right? If you go to, and we always use these analogies on here, Ted, I know you and I talk about it all the time, but if you break your ankle, you're not going to go to your
brain surgeon.
Yeah, you're going to go to an orthopedic guy, right? It's kind of the same way. So when we have a need or we're trying to solve a solution for a client, sometimes Kristin can be a resource. And we go, hey, I got this situation. Here's what I'm trying to do. And Kristin goes, hey, I've got a widget. There's that word.
Yeah.
We were talking about Kristin's going to steal my word widget from me. But you may have a widget that helps us solve that solution where we may not necessarily know that widget exists.
Another thing I think that's important is we may come across a situation for the first time that she's seen many times. So she has a better understanding of what may go into finding a solution for that particular circumstance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's kind of cool is, if, for example, we have a particular situation that we're saying, hey, I'm going to call Kristin and find out, or ask her for some advice. You've seen other advisors that have the same thing that have worked, and we're not really trying to invent the wheel here, right? So if somebody's done something in California and you've worked with them and said, oh yeah, this widget, is the solution, that's great. Well, I think that's part of what you bring to the table for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's start off. I've sort of been avoiding, I do this all the time, but I avoid this conversation to some degree.
Yes, you do.
Now, Kristin doesn't necessarily want to hear this, but
You do.
we do.
You
That's
do
right.
avoid this.
Okay.
Bring it.
We're talking about a particular word here that is can sometimes have a negative connotation. We talk about this. We've talked about this over and over and over on the show. But again, it's a great solution for the right situation. It's not a solution for every single situation the client's in. And I think that's the message sometimes that's brought about when we talk about annuities.
Yeah.
Right? There's that word. But I know that I came from a bank environment, and those guys, they pump annuities out the door like it's unreal. I mean, it's everybody that comes in the door gets an annuity.
I think it gets a really bad reputation with some people because there are practices out there, advisors out there, that this is the only solution that they use.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's where the bad reputation comes from, undeservedly.
Well, I think there's more than just that. You know, it's within the industry. There have historically been some conflicts that lead to misrepresentation or not leading with the best solution for the client because of those conflicts. There have been some really bad annuities out there that I would
That's
never
true.
talk to my mom or my dad about. So some of it's warranted, absolutely, but things have definitely changed over the past 10 years, especially in the annuity space. And at a high level, no matter who it is, that you're working with from a financial advisor perspective, or what you go online to get feedback on, or to do your research on what you're hearing and what you may want to consider, you can't talk to an extremist. Extremists get a ton of attention.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you look at, I mean, on both sides. I don't know, not to get in politics, but Donald Trump is an extremist, Bernie Sanders is an extremist.
Right.
Most of America is probably more in the middle of the road, and while the extremists get a lot of attention, they're not always going to be delivering the truth and the moderated facts that are relevant to that person. So if you're talking to somebody who says this always works or this never works, you may want to think again, because it's just a tool in the toolbox. You can't build a house thinking everything's a hammer. I mean, with a hammer thinking everything's a nail.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we thought we'd start off the conversation today is, let's just sort of paint a picture of the retirement landscape. I think it's sort of the term that Kristin uses quite a bit, where you may steal that one too. So let's just start off by sort of giving some statistics. Tad, why don't you take one? You can take that first one there.
2 out of 3 retirees, which means about 80 million people, have no source of protected income outside Social Security.
And pensions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, Dad.
That's all right. You're here to make us look good, so that's good.
Well, and my typing skills are not great, and I'm the one that typed this up. Remember last week, I blamed everything on you, because you're the one that came up with the 2 topics. So this week, if anything gets screwed up, you can blame me. You can actually
blame me.
Well, no, we wouldn't do that. You're a guest. No, you can actually send us an email, right? But send it to Tad. No. You guys can email us. Okay, so Chris, why don't you take one? Again, we're just sort of pointing out sort of what the environment is out there.
Okay. 17% of private sector employees have access to a pension.
Do you think that's more here in Louisville?
I think there's a lot of it in Kentucky in general, because the teachers in this state have a pension, and there's so many teachers in Kentucky because we have 2 large Ford assembly plants here in town. So there's union pensions out there.
Yep.
I would say there's more of them here than there are in many places.
But you got
it's
GE.
still, yeah, you've got GE, but still you're seeing pensions starting to phase out. More and more companies are dropping away from the traditional pension because of the expense.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Okay, so we got some other statistics. Like there was one I thought was pretty cool, which was 50% of the retirees. Was it 50% of the retirees don't believe that their money will last them throughout their retirement? I'm actually surprised not more than that.
Wow. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
more people don't believe that. Hey, let's do this. Let's come back. We're going to talk a couple more pieces on the retirement income landscape, and then we're going to get into, Miss Kristin's going to tell us about Mount Everest. We'll be back here in 2 minutes. Brian Ramsey and Chris Vaughn and Tad Douglas and Miss Kristin Shea.
What's up, y'all?
Rocky girl, I like that. All right, so at the end of the last segment, we were talking about sort of painting the retirement income landscape. What we're really getting into is we're going to talk more about solutions that we can provide clients given different issues that they run into when they get into retirement. That's really what we're trying to set up. But it's just these statistics. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. Kristin, when you and I are sort of prepping for the show, I mean, there's like dozens and dozens of statistics, and you actually have a couple of information packets that if someone's interested in it, they can email us you can just email it at info@fwppartners, and we can send it to you. Why don't you describe the PLI?
Sure. So PLI, easier to remember than Protected Lifetime Income Survey, but it's a first piece of an ongoing research study assessing Americans' retirement preparedness. And to piggyback on some of the stats that Chris and Tad just shared with us about the retirement income, the tools that we have to provide a guaranteed lifetime income. We have pensions, like we said. We have Social Security, which, make a note on that. And here, give you another stat. It only covers less than half of your non-negotiable retirement expenses. So in a world where we have a couple kind of shaky retirement income sources, there's a third tool, this PLI index survey delivers where that tool fits and some of the barriers to in between the client and meeting with the financial advisor to start building a plan that makes sense. So definitely, it's a fantastic piece. It's a consumer education piece, really high level. Info at fwppartners.com.
Yep, we can send it to them. It's a great tool. It's interesting because we're only covering a handful of the statistics that are on that form. So if you want it, make sure if you want a copy of it, make sure you can call us. We'll send it to you that way too, or we can mail it to you however you want to do it. The other one that I thought was pretty interesting was that 8 of 10 non-retirees lack a plan. I don't know that really surprises most advisors.
No.
No, not at all.
But it's just kind of scary which it kind of leads into your Mount Everest story, which I like. But it's just scary that most people sort of go throughout their accumulation phase of their life with no plan whatsoever. So they really don't know what they're planning or saving for. They just save, in their 401k or maybe put money in a Roth. But there's no plan to see what the actual outcome of all this is going to be that helps them over this Mount Everest story.
Yeah, and it's not their fault. It's not their fault. The baby boomers and the people that are approaching retirement today are in a completely unprecedented situation. So you look at when baby boomers, were born. They changed every aspect of society that they touched. When they're babies, there weren't enough diapers, there weren't enough strollers. When they're kids, there weren't enough schools. This is the first massive population segment that is facing a retirement that lasts 40 years. And up until this point, retirement after Social Security was only 2 years. Now we have 40 years that we need to plan for. And while most financial advisors and consumers and people in general are wired to make money grow, we have to shift our mindset and make sure that we have the tools to not only help us get to the top of that mountain, but make sure that we can get back down safely, which means making sure that you're not running out of money in retirement. And it's one of the most important parts, because when you look at real mountain climbing and looking at Mount Everest, more people die going down that mountain than climbing up it. And if you can't get back down to the bottom safely, everything else that you do was for nothing. So
yeah, when you were telling that story, I just was kind of running through my head. I was like, that's kind of a really cool story. I've never thought about that analogy, but I've watched some documentaries on Mount Everest, especially the one where the climbers all got killed by that avalanche. I don't know if you've seen that. That's a really cool documentary. But anyway, it's kind of cool how to relate the two, sort of as you think about the peak of Mount Everest is getting to the point where you retire, and then you sort of in the, that's sort of the accumulation phase of life, and then you get in the distribution phase of life. The whole way up the side, the progression up the side of this mountain, there's stages where they stop and they camp out. They have to accumulate through, to the altitude and all that sort of thing. But when they're there, you know, they're making sure their gear is dried out. So there's all these, there's all these things they have to do at every step of the way. They can't just climb right up to, 27,000 feet or whatever Mount Everest is. So the interesting thing is, if you think about retirement, it's kind of the same way as you're going through your accumulation phase of your life. You're sort of stopping and sort of checking where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making sure you're on track. You've got all the things you need to be put in place throughout your 20s, for example, because that's where Kristin is through that. And then you get into your 30s. Maybe you're having children, you're raising a family, you're starting 529s, you're trying to pay down your debt. So if you think about it, it's all, that was a really cool analogy, and I'm stealing it, by the way.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, all right. I'm stealing it anyway. You don't live around here.
I didn't make it up.
Yeah. Good.
You liberate it. That's what I say. I'm going to liberate this.
But it is kind of a cool story. And then when you get on when you get to the point to where you've reached the peak of your life, accumulation-wise, you start the downside. You can't just wing it. When you were telling the story, I thought, well, how funny would that be if to give the analogy, if you don't plan and you're at the top and you just kind of start to roll off the side of Mount Everest, you just run and tumble down the whole thing. That's not
That's a rough trip.
Yeah, sure. So what you do is you kind of have the Sherpas. They say, oh, we're now at the top, and you're going to make your way down, and we're going to stop here, and you're going to get acclimated to to the altitude, and again you have to eat, you have to sleep, and all that, and then you continue to make your way down. So it's just as much planning on the downside as it is on the upside.
That's
right?
a great analogy.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool. So we're kind of like Sherpas.
Yeah.
What about that? That could be our new title.
I like that.
Yeah, you're like King Sherpa.
King Sherpa.
Yeah, I'm kind of digging that.
We need to change our attire.
Well, yeah.
Get some new clothing.
No more shoes. I went on a backpacking trip with my mom to Machu Picchu in the Andes, and
Very
the
cool.
Sherpas were our friend, and they cooked for us. They carried up to a certain amount of pounds outside what was on
Right.
our backpack. So I love that analogy. But they didn't wear shoes, so they got to go. But you can keep your fancy socks. You guys got some killer socks.
Yeah, we do. Well, Tad doesn't. Tad doesn't like to play in the sandbox with us a whole lot, because remember last week we were doing a show on Roth IRAs?
Yeah.
And I opened up the show and I'm like, Tad, do you have a Roth IRA? And he's like, nope. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how can we?
He did admit that he was working on it.
He did. Within a break, we talked him into it. 1 2-minute break, we're like, hey, he's going to do a Roth IRA.
You didn't
I
tell me
remember
to do it. It was already in the plans.
Okay. All right. But hey, but in all seriousness, I like that analogy of Mount Everest, and but it sort of relates back to the statistic of, what we're finding, or what, what statistics are showing, that 8 of 10 pre-retirees have not done any planning whatsoever. So think about, going up Mount Everest with no plan whatsoever. You sort of, kind of packed your gear yourself, so you've done no planning on what you actually need to make it up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know how much food you need. You don't know where to stop and get acclimated to the altitude. You don't know what layers to put on to get to a certain level. Because it's all about layering. Because when you get moving, you kind of have to delayer a little bit. People don't think you do that, but according to that, that documentary I watched, you do, which I didn't know that. So it's all about the planning, and it's kind of like when you're telling the story. I thought, well, it's almost like somebody that goes over there. They have this goal they want to reach, which is climbing to the peak of Mount Everest. When they get there, they have planners that sort of guide them through. You need all this, gear and food or whatever else. But then when you get there, you have a guide that gets you from point A to point B to C, or whatever stages there are. So it's kind of like having an advisor, and all your advisors, right? It's not just your financial advisor; it's your CPA, right? They play a major role in what we do.
Absolutely, they do.
There's your attorney, right? So your attorney is going to make sure that you have the proper documents in place. And Kristin, you and I were talking about this on the way over here to record. Of sort of a niche that we have is elder care planning, and that is a very specific attorney does elder. Not everybody does it. Now, are there attorneys that say they will do it? Yeah, but do they know how to actually draft Medicaid compliant trusts? I don't know. It's a specialty.
Yeah.
And so you got to make sure that that All right, Tad's getting a phone call. Go ahead and answer it. All right, but it's it's important to make sure that you are aligning yourself with the right advisors along the way to get you from point A to point B. You can't just wing it yourself. I guess that's the kind of point I was trying to make.
Can you imagine? So whether it is making sure that you have your Medicare, you have the health insurance, or the annuities, whatever you want to call it. Can you imagine if there was somebody out there that said, just to marry that analogy, that you should not use waterproof backpacks? You know what I mean? Because I don't like the guy that sells them to you. Well, if you're backpacking in Hawaii, you might. So that kind of rule doesn't make sense. It's unique for everybody. You can't discount a tool.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Umbrella statement.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're moving on from Mount Everest to the Rolling Stones. Now, I don't know how we're going to make that transition.
This is not the Rolling Stones.
Well, I know, but Jim's going to help us out on
Okay.
the break. He's already shaking his head like, I got this. All right, come right back.
The Rolling Stones, Jim?
No, so it is Peace of Mind Radio. We'll be right back here in 2 minutes. All right. So everybody's kind of head bump, well, except for Tad. Tad's not head bumping in here, but all right. We give Tad a lot of grief. Only because he's like in direct line to me looking to Jim when he gives me the down.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. So today we're talking about annuities, and it's something that we all do. We all have that widget in our toolbox,
Sure.
and we all use them, right? I mean, Stan used a ton of them, and they make a ton of sense, but for the right situation.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. We want to make sure we sort of lay the groundwork of what we're talking about, and we're going to show you how we're going to attempt to sort of integrate how we look at retirement income planning and using annuities as part of the toolbox that we have available to produce permanent income in retirement. And we're going to use the Ever story. I'm not sure how we're going to do it yet. We're going to do it.
Work that in.
Yeah, I'm going to work it in. But before we do that, Kristin, once you had a very interesting experience over the last year. Is it still going or not?
No.
No. Okay. So over the last year, Kristin, I'd follow you on LinkedIn, and you would do these really cool segments on LinkedIn at the Rolling Stone shows,
Oh.
right? While they were on tour,
Yeah.
right? So,
Sure did.
what was the premise behind that?
Great question. That was a question many people were asking. What the heck does retirement planning have to do with the Rolling Stones?
Because it seems like they're never going to retire, because they're like 100 years old, pretty close, right?
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with the official scripts.
Yeah,
because,
got it. My bad.
Because
you
Mick
can't-
Jagger and team will never retire. They are not old. They're better than ever.
Yeah, I get it.
They're hitting their peak.
Yeah, I get it.
Retirement's not in their vocabulary.
Got it.
No, but it was a really cool,
But you got to go to their shows, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
What's really cool and where that conversation started was the tour was sponsored by this consumer-facing, education-based nonprofit called the Alliance for Lifetime Income, and I was fortunate enough to join forces with them based on how I currently work with advisors and how they're trying to elevate the country and solve the retirement income crisis. And part of my responsibilities this summer was to go on tour with them, not on like the band tour bus, but go on tour with them to the shows where we had these activation sites where we engaged with concert goers who, of course, for the most part were baby boomers and fit the target demographic for people who really need to be thinking about it. And that's who actually put forth this PLI index survey. Again, definitely go to info@fwppartners.com. Tad or Brian or Chris, whatever, and ask for a copy. But we had a couple different on-site activities. One was a little putt-putt course with the Rolling Stones tongue and whatnot, and it just helped people wrap their mind around the concept of risk. So, the first hole, it was super easy. You made the hole in one, they give you a piece of swag. You can move on to hole 2 and risk it to get, a cooler T-shirt or a hat,
Yep.
and it's a little bit harder and so on and so forth. There were a couple things going on like that. one of my responsibilities was to work with the camera crew and interview concert goers about what retiring like a rock star means to them and what their goals are in retirement. And it's really, really exciting to hear how much cool stuff America's people all over the country want to do with this whole new chapter, all the businesses they want to start, all the places they want to go. And then the next question, because we're talking, we're coming from a place of, educating people about what tools they have to make those retirement dreams happen, is have you taken any steps to make sure that you can secure that financially? Have you talked to an advisor? Are you familiar with an annuity? Most people get pretty stuck, and it shook me, to just have that same conversation time and time again.
But one of the questions that you were mentioning as we were sort of talking about this was, you would ask them the question, do you know about annuities? They're like, what was it? They were like, yeah. And then you said, then there's a follow-up, and they're like, no, I really don't know.
Right. Are you familiar with an annuity? Oh, yeah. Love annuities. They're great. Okay, great. So what do you know about them? Well, I don't really know anything. Can you tell me? Sometimes you heard people say, occasional person say, I don't like annuities. I don't know, I don't like annuities. Well, why don't you like them? Well, I don't know. It went both ways.
Right. No, I get that. But again, I think that goes back to our earlier conversation, is they just have this strange, kind of love-hate relationship, when in all reality it should be, as you were mentioning earlier, it's not the Trump of the world and it's not the Bernie Sanders of the world. Really, they should be looked at as sort of the middle of the road, where, it's not necessarily evil on one side, it's not evil on the other. They have great solutions and can fit a need for a client, and income need in retirement, and they're a great solution.
Yeah.
If properly used.
3 of the top 4 reasons why people do not own annuities are related to the fact that they don't know anything about them or their advisor hasn't talked to them.
Yeah.
It's a lack of education.
But don't you see where, let me ask you this. This is a sort of a do you see question. Do you see, as sort of your experience working with other advisors around, and we know, Tad, you and I have talked about this a lot, there's certainly advisors in Louisville that's all they do, right? I mean, and we sort of use them as a little bit of a punchline occasionally. But
Johnny, one note.
Yeah. So
one solution for every problem.
Yeah, that's right. But do you see, as you sort of travel around, and you're talking annuities, right? So do you see that there are some advisors that are like, I'm not even going to take your call because you're trying to get me to push annuities and I'm absolutely not going to do it? Or their advisors go, yep, call me because that's all I ever do.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what's crazy? Okay, I'm going to.
But don't you think that's a disservice?
It's crazy because in the same week, a client can talk to an advisor who's a fiduciary, CFP. It says, based on my fiduciary responsibility to put you in the best situation, without any bias, based on my prudence due diligence, that the annuity is going to be the best fit for you. That same week, they can talk to another CFP fiduciary that says, absolutely not, annuities are the devil. So our industry has a bit of lack of trust, right? So it doesn't help the fact that we're trying to elevate people's preparedness for retirement when they can't get a straight answer on something it's not a religion. It's not it's a tool in the toolbox that will create positive outcomes in retirement. It is an absolute disservice. And to those advisors that will not take my call because they haven't looked at the products in 10 years,
right.
I don't, it's a touchy thing to say, but it's an important question to ask. Can you still call yourself a fiduciary if you are not willing to at least look at this tool?
Yeah, the other thing I would say is it really is sort of a disservice to the client to not at least explore, on behalf of the advisor, to explore what the annuities can provide for them, right? Because as we said earlier, not every client that we work with has a pension. Most everybody has Social Security, but nobody has a pension. So we're going to get into this on the next segment about sort of how we view annuities and how we sort of put them in place as in practicality. But I think if you're listening and you have an advisor and your advisor has not, you're getting near retirement, or let's say you're within 10 years of retirement, and your advisor has not discussed options as a source of income in retirement, then you should give us a call and say, okay, my advisor's never done that. What conversations do you have with your clients about how you use annuities in retirement planning? Because it's not taking all your money and put it into an annuity. That's not it at all.
No.
No. But it is, as you like to say, it is sort of a creation of your own pension, right?
Yeah.
It's fixed income or bond replacement, which is another strategy we talked about. So there's lots of things that, and we'll talk about this over the next break, but there are ways to position annuities in a portfolio that can make an absolute ton of sense. And we have clients right now that we deal with that started, let's say they purchased annuities 10 years ago, and now we're seeing the effects of the income that's produced on it. And I tell them all the time, there's no way that you could take that money and put it in the market and have it create that much income 10 years later. It's for the rest of your life. It's nearly impossible to do that.
Right.
It just, because the numbers just don't work like that, right? But properly designed annuity, if you're putting something in place and you're allowing it to grow and, it's kind of like that old Stan would say, it's like putting a seed in the ground. You gotta let it grow until you one day need to harvest it, and then harvest can, yeah.
I think the analogy that I would use, Kristin pointed out that this is a tool, and it's just another tool in the toolbox. Do you have a bias against the screwdrivers that are in your toolbox?
If they're not,
as opposed to the hammer or the ratchet, they're all tools, and you use the tools that are going to most effectively accomplish the task.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that pretty much describes what you were talking about, right, Kristin?
Yes.
There you
Nailed
go.
the only bias I have about tools in my toolbox
it.
is,
Uh-oh.
no, if it's a manual screwdriver, I'm out. Like, it's got to have, a power screwdriver. If it's like an old manual thing where you got to, I'm done.
That's how a screwdriver works, right? You just...
I know, but I'm talking about put a battery on the battery pack on one. The screw comes out real fast, goes in real fast. I can put 100 screws in by the time you put 2 in manually.
Yeah, but you can't get the touch.
Okay,
You're using
well,
I'm biased
automated.
against the whole toolbox.
the whole box itself.
That's what I'm getting married for.
Oh, but we'll cut that out. So
Well,
we'll cut that out so he doesn't necessarily hear you say that.
okay.
All right. Hey,
He doesn't know how to use the toolbox either.
Well, that's
We're
good.
all biased against the toolbox.
all right, good deal. Well, hey, it's Brian Ramsey, Ted Douglas, Chris Vaughn, and our guest Kristin Shea. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We're going to wrap up our conversation around annuities. Be right back. All right, it's Brian Ramsey and Ted Douglas and head bumping Chris Vaughn, and even Kristin's over there is doing a little head banging too. Even Jim is. I see him in there. All right. So we've been talking about annuities, but we've sort of been setting the situation to say, okay, we've talked about annuities. We've sort of given some analogy on making sure that we're doing the planning, and the biggest thing is that you've got to just make sure you are planning so that you can take advantage of what annuities can offer. That's the biggest thing, right? So if you haven't done, and don't be one of those 8 of 10 non-retirees that lack a plan that we mentioned earlier, or as Kristin's analogy that she talked about, don't be one of those listeners that goes into the accumulation phase of your life, or you're in the accumulation phase of your life, or in the latter part of the accumulation phase of your life, and you're starting up that mountain of Mount Everest, and you've not met with your Sherpa, the King Sherpa over here, Chris.
King Sherpa, there you go.
Yeah, but you've not really done that plan to know what you need to pack in your backpack. You don't know, you just haven't put together a plan. Don't be that way. Just make sure you work with a professional. That's the thing. You don't necessarily have to work with us. We'd love to meet you and see if it makes sense for us to work together. But just make sure that you're working with a professional. Our phone number, if you want to work with us, is 502-233-9800. You can also go to peaceofmindradio.com and schedule a one-on-one meeting with any of us. But before the last break, we were talking about the different ways that we use annuities. right, for
Right.
different solutions. So let's just take each one of these, and Ted, I'll let you sort of take the first one. Sort of when you're working with a client and let's say they don't have a pension, but they have Social Security, and we're sort of setting the stage to do sort of their own personal pension, right? Sort of give your thoughts around how you talk to clients around creating a personal pension using annuities.
What we're going to try to do with the Social Security and either annuities or some other source of guaranteed income, pension, whatever it may be, is to make certain that we're covering their Kristin called them non-negotiable expenses, their fixed expenses. Rent, utilities, food, transportation, those basic things that we know they're going to need to have.
Prescriptions.
So, yeah, prescriptions, health care, health insurance. So if someone has a $5,000 monthly budget and $3,500 of it is recurring month after month, we want to do the best we can to cover that amount of money. For most people, I think Kristin said earlier, most people for Social Security doesn't cover half of their expenses. The larger your income, the less percentage is going to cover in retirement. For most people, it's about 40-45% of their pre-retirement income. So that may mean we need another $1,000 in guaranteed income. So that would be the first thing we would look at, first thing I would look at,
Right.
in looking at some sort of a guaranteed income.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that how we've typically done it, especially working with a lot of Stan's clients, is let's take, for example, we've used this now, or this example a lot. So let's say a client has a portfolio, and let's say 40% of their assets need to be in non-volatile securities like fixed income, right? Even though I guess fixed income is considered volatile, but let's just call it non-volatile, for example. Okay, so of that 40%, maybe 20% or 50% of that amount we could allocate towards annuities to produce exactly what Tad's talking about, right? We put it in place, let's say in their 50s, mid-50s to late 50s, we let it grow over time, and when they're ready to turn that income stream on, it's what we consider to be permanent, predictable income. And if you don't have that, you're sort of winging it a little bit, but you don't necessarily have to have, the annuity create 100% of the income that you need. It's just a portion of it, right? So for example, we always use it, if your income needs are $5,000 a month and you get $2,000 in Social Security benefits, maybe you only need, in the planning process, so we do planning and we say, let's look and see how much assets we need to put away today to create a guaranteed $1,500 a month when you retire. So really, you're sort of guaranteeing about $3,500 of the $5,000 that you need, right? That's really all you need. You don't have to guarantee 100% of it.
Right.
Right?
No, and you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't necessarily, well, you don't have to, right? Be proper planning. Again, kind of
Right.
goes back to that planning. All right, so Chris, why don't you take sort of the bond replacement?
Well, okay, so the concept on bond replacement is that, a good balanced portfolio is going to have a percentage of equities in it. It's going to have a percentage of fixed income, most people would call bonds, in that area. The biggest problem with bonds right now is if you own bonds, those bonds will eventually mature. So they're no longer going to provide that income to you anymore, and you have to purchase new bonds. And with the interest rates the way that they've been over the last 10 years, and there's no real belief that that's going to go back up. The problem is, as you're buying those new bonds, you're getting less and less revenue off of them. You can use certain types of annuities in that situation to replace a good portion of that bond part of the portfolio, and it actually takes a lot of the risk of the portfolio out while still getting the same, or in some cases even better, returns. And that's bond replacement.
Well, yeah, and the other thing I'd say about it is if you have most people own fixed income in a mutual fund.
Right.
When you say,
Yeah,
or
that's
exchange
most of
traded,
it.
but for the most part. So in a mutual fund, if you have your fixed income allocated, and we've gone through what we've just gone through over the last 7 or 8 years, you have the Feds raising interest rates, lowering interest rates, up and down, up and down. You've got the value of that bond allocation will go down in value. You could lose, in theory, like on paper, lose money, right?
There is no maturity date.
Well, and there's no maturity date on it.
It's perpetual
And there's no
potential losses as interest rates go up.
permanent predictable income out of it. We talk about that. You typically get interest paid out of it, but it's not the same amount every single, month or quarter or whatever it pays. But if you allocate some money to an annuity, which doesn't have the interest rate volatility, because you're getting a somewhat regular interest rate paid, but the value doesn't really decrease. And in fact, if you have an income rider, which we're not getting into today, it grows at a pretty consistent rate or guaranteed rate. In the contract, it says you will grow at X% every year.
And frankly, in the rising interest rate environment, it puts the annuities in an even better scenario because it gives the carriers more wiggle room to put more cash in your clients' pockets.
Right.
And just to be explicit, we talk about annuity, we're talking about retirement income. The annuity is the third tool outside of pensions and Social Security. Only 3 tools that can guarantee a monthly lifetime income.
That's right. Yeah, but again, if your advisor has never had that conversation with you,
It's crazy.
it is. At least explore it. It doesn't mean you have to do it, right? But you have the information you need in order to do that. I got one other piece because I think we're coming up. We got about a minute left here. But here's the other thing. You can use annuities to supply an income stream for a fixed expense for the rest of your life. As an example, and I have actually done this, I know someone else in the room is actually working on it right now, where we have a client that has a very large permanent life insurance policy. They're using the income from the annuity to pay the premiums on the life insurance policy that are guaranteed for the rest of your life.
You can do that with the life insurance or any other type of insurance for that matter. So if you've got long-term care insurance in order to provide for extended care things, you can pay that from the annuities. Just any type of fixed expense can be covered that way.
Exactly, and that's exactly a great segue. I don't know if you meant to do that or not, or maybe you did.
Gee, I would never have thought that far in advance.
Perfect, because we have somebody hiding over in the corner that's getting ready to step up to the mic. We're actually recording 2 shows today, by the way. We usually do them once a week. Wait, no, just kidding. But anyway, so we are having the next week's, make sure you tune in next week because we're going to be talking about long-term care, which is incredibly important. It's a very under-discussed topic, but it's incredibly important, so make sure you tune in. And I believe Amy's getting ready and getting excited over there. So, Kristin, thank you so much for doing this radio show with us
Thanks, guys.
and coming in town and visiting with us.
Yeah, I'll be back.
All right, cool.
I'm loving Kentucky.
Good. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and make sure you tune in next week. We're going to introduce Amy and talk long-term care. Take care, everybody.